4. To thine own self be true. Find your unique gifts. The fourth law of wealth. Don't follow where the path may lead. Go instead to where there is no path and leave a trail. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Creating and building one of the fastest growing technology firms in the country, a company that currently nets more than $200 million per year in sales and has been valued at more than $1 billion, not only required Amos Winbush III to master the fourth law of wealth, but forced him to call on and utilize gifts and talents that he never knew he possessed. Barely 30 years old, his business acumen and savvy have earned him numerous awards, including Entrepreneur Magazine's 100 Brilliant Companies Award and Inc. Magazine's 30 Under 30, America's Coolest Young Entrepreneurs. Ironically, it took Winbush less than 2 years to sense that a college degree was not for him. Although he enjoyed the collegial atmosphere and his business management classes at Louisiana State University, climbing the corporate ladder and dancing to someone else's drum was less than appealing. After dropping out and moving to New York, what began as a hobby soon became his main source of income. If his last name sounds familiar, it should. Rhythm and blues singer Angela Winbush is a cousin. Most of Amos Winbush's family found fame and fortune in the recording industry, and in 2007, he was poised to do the same, landing a record deal after releasing a series of promising singles. But before his music career could advance any further, fate would play a role. During a recording session, Winbush noticed that his iPhone had gone completely black, resulting in the loss of critical information and contacts. Frustrated with nowhere to turn, he spent the better part of a week trying to recover the lost data. The experience led him to quiz other cell phone users as well as their mobile carriers. Baffled that no one had addressed what he believed to be an avoidable problem, and angry that his cell phone provider had not warned him of such a possibility, an idea was spawned. "I could barely sleep," he recounted. "I literally dreamed about launching a company that would solve an industry-wide problem. The next morning I called my business manager and asked, 'How do I start a tech company?'" Winbush was intuitive and had a keen instinct for making technology user-friendly. His creativity as a musician also served him well. After consulting with a software engineer and a host of technology developers, Winbush took the plunge and bootstrapped his company out of his Manhattan apartment. With limited funding and no office, his small team worked from home and local coffee shops. Over the course of the next 5 years, Winbush skirted bankruptcy and began to frame what would become one of the hottest technology startups, CyberSyncs LLC. His goal was to design and build a universal wireless platform that allows users to store, synchronize, and transfer electronic data on the web to and from virtually any media device, including cell phones, cameras, and personal computers, regardless of where the data are generated. The CyberSyncs web service is accessible worldwide and stores subscribers' contacts, text messages, voicemails, notes, photos, videos, ringtones, calendar content, GPS, and email. Moreover, even if the device is broken, lost, or destroyed, users who have synchronized their mobile data with CyberSyncs can access their information. Although the company began with mobile synchronization only, the synchronization of all electronic devices will soon be available. Upon agreement, users can download an application that will send their content to a secure account. This technology allows information to flow among operating systems, manufacturers, and cellular networks. Hoping to avoid the experience of so many Silicon Valley startups that never made it beyond the new venture phase, Winbush seized the rare opportunity to partner with major high-tech firms such as Sun Microsystems and Samsung, which enabled CyberSyncs to expand its market penetration exponentially. Not only does CyberSyncs continue to ride the crest of almost uncontrollable growth, but the future for this innovative firm is full of high-tech possibilities. For example, the company will soon release a product that integrates software into televisions and allows users to avoid purchasing hardware. As of this writing, this New York City-based firm boasts 30 employees and more than 60 million users worldwide. Amos Winbush has been highly successful in executing his path-breaking idea. But what can you learn from his example? During a personal interview, this young, hard-driving innovator quickly pointed out the key. It was only by chasing my dream, overcoming obstacles, and pursuing this course to the end did I ever realize that I had a gift for leading a team and motivating others. I'm not your typical high-tech chief executive. I launched my firm at the height of the recession. We were the ultimate bootstrap company with limited capital and no office. My employees worked from home, and if necessary, we met in local midtown coffee shops. I was forced to wear a number of hats, from staffing to designing software, raising capital, forging key corporate partnerships, and strategic planning, all of which required me to polish my communication and financial skills, qualities that lay dormant within my personality. At the end of the day, I had to fight for my dream and demonstrate that I could manage a fast-paced technology company. So to aspiring small business owners, I suggest that you tap into your inner reserves and search inside to find your true gifts, your unique talents. Not everyone possesses the ability to navigate life without a paycheck. I don't care if you earn $5 a week or $5,000. Regardless if the economy is on an upswing or ailing, you must look inside and ask, what is my purpose? What are my true gifts? Never allow what you can't do to stop you from doing what you can do. Like his peers, Winbush adheres to the two qualities shared by nearly all successful men and women. 1. They know who they are. They possess a keen sense of what makes them tick. They understand their own motivations, and most have mastered the difficult task of deciphering their unique gifts, talents, and abilities. They know that personal assessment is the first step to amassing great wealth. 2. They are obsessed with playing to their strengths. In short, they are driven by tightly crafted goals, matched only with the discipline and skill set to achieve their objectives. The difference between the haves and have-nots does not rest with possessions or lack thereof. No, their disparity can be found in their individual talents and abilities, as well as their goals and what each group is willing to do to attain them. How can you apply this fundamental truth? By understanding that you are different and then by capitalizing on your differences. The It Factor. You can sense a special something in the skilled self-confidence of corporate rainmakers such as Ken Chenault of American Express, Ursula Burns of Xerox, or Rita Mack, a black woman who at the height of her corporate career left a cushy job to seek her destiny under McDonald's golden arches. 3 franchises later, Mack's nimble fingers rest on the switch of the most powerful economic engine within the black community, the National Black McDonald's Operators Association, NBMOA. As Chief Executive Officer and Chair, Mack oversees the mission of the 37-year-old organization while ensuring the success of McDonald's 1,400 African-American franchises and supporting the communities that they serve. This is no small task. The revenue from NBMOA franchises exceeds $3.2 billion. Mack's very presence exudes self-assurance. The main business of life, she mentioned during an Atlanta, Georgia-based focus group, is not to do, but to become. We saw it in the early 1990s in R. Donahue Peebles, at that time a powerful player in real estate development in Washington, D.C. As told by a writer at Inc. magazine, while on a family vacation in Miami, Peebles decided to purchase and renovate the majestic but aging Royal Palms, a 417-room resort at the end of South Beach's Tony Ocean Drive, an undertaking that would require 6 years to finish. This project allowed Peebles to break new ground. The Royal Palm Crown Plaza became the first black-owned resort in the United States, and just as important, the project cemented Peebles' reputation as an aggressive and politically savvy businessman and one of the most powerful real estate brokers in South Florida. Today, Peebles Atlantic Development Corporation portfolio includes hotels, apartments, and office space in Miami Beach and Washington, D.C., in addition to 13 acres of prime Las Vegas land adjacent to the famed Encore Casino. As a result, Peebles Corporation is the largest African-American-owned development firm in the nation, with real estate holdings valued at approximately $500 million. But for those of you who hope to one day replicate Peebles' success, or at least to conduct business with this real estate mogul, I offer the following advice. His strategy and personal philosophy are even more aggressive than the facts suggest. Peebles' strength of character as much as his smarts has made him successful. It's a combination of hard work and good judgment, and having the disposition to go with your call, regardless of whether it's popular. I take being a minority business person as a responsibility, he shared with me during an interview. My grandfather was a doorman for 40 years at a Marriott hotel in D.C. I'm the product of a single mother who worked as a secretary during the day and pursued her real estate license at night. I make it my business to provide opportunities to minorities and women, both of whom are underrepresented in my industry. But all too frequently people come up with excuses as to why they can't succeed. They say it's too difficult, and they relinquish their goals before they have a chance to fulfill them. I could have made a lot of excuses in my career, but the number one ingredient to financial success is to focus on the task at hand. Though each of us is gifted, unfortunately, some of us fail to open our gifts. Live the life you were destined to live. I personally felt it the moment I shook the hand of John Hope Bryant. In 1984, the celebrated social entrepreneur was a homeless teenager living out of the backseat of his car. 8 years later, he was running a successful financial services firm with 40 employees and a $5 million budget. But soon it would all come to a screeching halt. In 1992, although Bryant's life finally seemed under control, his beloved city, Los Angeles, was ripped apart by racial strife due in part to the Rodney King verdict. After the violence and chaos subsided, Bryant saw that his community was not only in shambles but desperately needing a hand up, not a handout. More than willing to fill the leadership void, Bryant solicited the support from bankers, investors, and corporate America, basically anyone who was interested in rebuilding South Central Los Angeles. Refusing to ignore the pain and horror each new day brought, he launched Operation Hope, an organization dedicated to providing just that, hope, uplifting the economically disadvantaged while broadening the financial empowerment in those declining areas through increased fiscal awareness. The organization's primary mission was to connect those areas hard hit by the riot to private sector opportunities. No stranger to hard work, Bryant went knocking on doors attempting to secure financing for those whose businesses were damaged or destroyed, or financing would-be entrepreneurs who dreamed of launching new enterprises. Since inception, Operation Hope has served more than 1.2 million individuals, raised more than $500 million, while creating 1,000 new homeowners within those areas affected by the riot. As of this writing, this economic Good Samaritan is sought the world over for his leadership and ability to transform once blighted and neglected communities into wealth-creating and stable oases of hope. These examples both frame and illustrate the essence of the wealthy mindset. The wealthy are driven by the skills and unique talents like those of John Hope Bryant, gifts that would wipe out disappointment and embolden the heart for future conquest. Abilities that encourage and motivate as well as provide direction. The black financial elite have an internal drive for self-discovery. They operate under a sense of urgency and a passion for achievement. Anyone who desires the key to joining the seven-figure club and enjoying all that life has to offer should clutch these profiles to his or her heart. By choosing to define life on your terms, you take the first step toward success. But you must choose. Unfortunately, so many of us awake each morning with dread in our hearts and fear in our minds. We face the monotony of another day with its hopeless toil and ceaseless pressures. More and more of us are being hammered into a lifestyle we cannot endure, cannot afford, or can barely tolerate. We have forgotten one of the basic tenets of the prosperous life. We have been given dominion over this world. We each chart our own course. It was never the intention of our Creator to chart a course for us. That would place us all under His bondage. Instead, He bestowed on each of us talents and gifts and the ability to think and envision our own way in any manner that we choose. But the key is choice. Bryant had no doubt that the jury in the Rodney King trial, a court case that would infuriate so many in our nation, would return a guilty verdict. He believed that, between the national media and the irrefutable videotaped evidence, it would be impossible for the verdict to not be guilty. As it turned out, Bryant was mistaken, but he refused to allow the verdict and its violent aftermath to destroy his essential optimism. To the contrary, the riots gave this visionary the impetus to start an organization focused literally on providing hope for the future. With regard to our lives, each of us has been given options. We need not spend another day in poverty, self-pity, or fear. Why is there so much needless pain and grief? Why are there so many unnecessary failures? The answer is obvious. A maxim states, success in life comes not from holding a good hand, but playing a poor hand well. Too many of us have never dared to find our talents, strengths, and gifts. The indigent who guide their pushcart through the alley to gather bottles and aluminum cans will remain between the shafts of their rickety cart as long as they believe that they lack the talent for anything else. Why have we permitted the plague of doubt, fear, and poverty to infect us? Why can we cure some of the most dreaded diseases, circle distant planets, transplant human organs, and even create life in a test tube, and yet make so little progress in elevating our opinion of ourselves and our many talents? To underscore the above, Bryant used the following analogy. If I gave a homeless man $1 million, the odds are 3 to 1 that within 1 year he would be broke and homeless once again. Unfortunately, so few understand that his problem is not that he is broke, but rather that he is poor, and there is a difference between the two. Being broke is a temporary economic condition, but being poor is a disabling state of mind and depressed condition of the spirit, and you must vow to never be poor. The word capital is derived from the Latin root capitis, or simply put, knowledge in the head. Consequently, if you are poor in your thoughts and mind, you will be poor in your pockets. The alternative is also true. If I can convince you that you are valuable, wealthy, important, and that you've been given a place in this world, and then equip you with the tools to succeed in this market-driven economy, then you will be given a real shot at opportunity and sustainable financial success. But you must be prepared when your moment of opportunity arrives. That means you must be twice as smart, twice as aggressive, twice as assertive, twice as creative and enterprising, and twice as talented. This is the only way that you can tip the scale in your favor. If you don't uncover your gifts, it's because you fail to realize that gifts have been given. To sum up, you don't get money. Money gets you. What they teach at Harvard Business School. You may have read or heard of the Harvard study to be discussed in this chapter. It's worth citing as you dedicate both time and energy to designing the financial life you want to lead. In his best-selling book, What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School, the highly regarded sports agent Mark McCormick noted a 10-year study conducted at Harvard University in the 1980s. In 1979, graduates of this renowned MBA program were asked to set clear goals for their future as well as specific strategies to accomplish them. After analyzing the data, only 3% of these graduates actually wrote their goals, 13% developed goals and objectives but had not committed their plans to paper, and 84%, aside from a May graduation and enjoying the summer, failed to set or clarify any goals at all. 10 years later, in 1989, a follow-up study was conducted where researchers interviewed members of that same graduating class. To their surprise, they discovered that the 13% who set goals but failed to write them down earned, on average, twice as much as the 84% of students who had no goals at all. Furthermore, the 3% of graduates who set clear, specific written goals earned 10 times that of their classmates. The only difference between the groups was the clarity of goals they had set and spelled out for themselves on graduation. In the context of this audiobook, what does this study mean? Black millionaires do what they do best. When I asked survey respondents to identify specific strengths, They were quite clear as to the skills, talents, and abilities they held in abundance. Moreover, they were aware that to excel financially in their chosen field and to find lasting satisfaction in doing so, they had to become efficient at finding, describing, applying, and utilizing their innate talents. In short, Black millionaires shift their focus and utilize any special gifts. Refusing to be miscast in their vocation, they shun any personal weaknesses or tasks that don't pique their self-interest, no matter how minute or trivial, and instead explore the intricate detail of their unique talent. Throughout my focus groups, nearly 3/4 of respondents cited that they strongly agree with the statement, "I am doing what I do best," in terms of their profession, title, role, or economic status. Practically speaking, here lie the two assumptions that guide the thinking of Black America's financial elite. 1. Each of us has been given talents and gifts that are enduring and unique. 2. Individually, your greatest opportunity for financial growth lies within your greatest strengths, talents, and gifts. These two assumptions explain why Black millionaires continue to think outside of the box. With regard to their career and life's work, they break all the rules of conventional thinking. Realizing that no individual can be ideally successful until he or she has found his or her true place, they refuse to be a square peg in a round hole. During the course of this research, I had the good fortune to hear Carla Harris, the managing director of global capital markets for the industry leader Morgan Stanley and one of the highest-ranking Black women on Wall Street, address a group of bankers, analysts, investors, and members of a little-known Black millionaires roundtable. Harris's words were typical of the motivating and insightful presentations that she has delivered to similar audiences throughout her career. A room full of ambitious, highly skilled wealth creators and their supporters eagerly awaited her remarks. Her delivery was fast and breezy, and it was tinged with her own personal down-home philosophy. I sat glued to my seat and watched her work her magic. The Wall Street vet grabbed the edge of the podium and leaned forward. Before she uttered a word, she shot her listeners the kind of stare an adult gives a child when he or she is about to explain one of life's innermost secrets. But instead of offering her assessment on the current state of the market or which blue chip stock to buy, her words were centered on what I interpreted to be the bedrock of prosperity and abundance, as well as the fourth law of wealth. Surprisingly, this fourth law remains unknown to the masses as well as to most educators and the so-called learned among us. I urge you not to follow their example. For any number of reasons, they chose not to open this door. If they could, they would have done so. For example, though the possibilities of life are open to all, why do so few of my race manage to climb among the ranks of the wealthy, particularly in a country where financial independence is available to anyone who comes calling? Case in point, when reviewing the U.S. Statistical Abstract, a collection of statistics on social and economic conditions tabulated by the U.S. Census Bureau, I discovered that fewer than 3% of Black males 65 years of age and older boast incomes of $75,000 per year. Furthermore, more than 80% of all Black men 65 and older have incomes below $50,000 per year, and nearly 75% have incomes between $5,000 and $50,000. Today, the majority of men and women launch their working careers when they are in their 20s, often earlier. These individuals are fortunate to live in a free world, in the most open society on the face of the earth. Each person is given more than 40 years in their chosen line of work to make the grade financially, yet, according to the data, very few do so. Why? Conduct your own survey. Stroll through your neighborhood and ask your friends and family members 2 questions. What are you doing to increase your current income? How much money will you be worth at age 65? Canvass your community. Ask 50 men and women, 100, 1,000, everyone you know, until you are completely convinced that the reason that people don't earn more money and the root cause as to why so few are financially stable as they approach retirement is that they seldom, if ever, engage in any constructive thinking on either subject. To prove this analysis, ask yourself the same thought-provoking questions. Prior to listening to this chapter, what were your plans for increasing your income? How much money do you want to earn? How much money have you decided to be worth by age 65? In your estimation, what does this question have to do with the fourth law of wealth? The answer is simple. People who earn impressive incomes are not lucky, nor do they possess a monopoly on talent or ideas, nor are they endowed with more intellect than their friends or neighbors. Most individuals who earn handsome incomes began in the same fashion as you and I. The only difference between those who earn large incomes and those who don't is that at some point the financial elite utilized this fourth law and made a conscious decision to change their lives for the better. Those who have reached seven-figure status have been noted for their power of focus and concentration, which makes them oblivious to every challenge, circumstance, or roadblock. If you are to walk among the financial elite, you must alter your habits, refine your thinking, develop key relationships, embrace the unlimited possibilities that lie within your reach, and take control of your life. However, these basics alone will be of little value and will fail to place you within shouting distance of your financial goals. Without a fixed purpose, the ability to focus your faculties on one dominant objective, these attributes will be of little use in navigating the road to affluence. What prosperity demands, what millionaireship calls for, is the man or woman who, when opportunity knocks, can move immediately, who, when times are tough, turns neither to the left nor right, come hell or high water, can hang on as long as it takes. When they can't catch a break, can lay it all on the line, and when down to their last dime, can proceed on faith. These are the men and women who step to the front, who make their mark, and who earn millions in the process. The way to wealth? Live your life on purpose. By any measure, Carla Harris boasts an impressive resume. From best-selling author to sought-after lecturer, gospel singer, and board director of 8 nonprofit organizations. Harris, who squeezes those activities into a calendar that also includes her responsibilities as managing director for Morgan Stanley's investment management business, clearly is someone who understands how to concentrate, stay focused and sane amid a multitude of claims on her time and attention. If you wish to test whether this peak performer is capable of turning the impossible into the possible, just mention that she can't do something. Earn an MBA from Harvard? No problem. Become a managing director at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, one of Wall Street's preeminent investment banks? Done. Record a gospel CD in the same year that she executes one of the largest initial public offerings, IPOs, in U.S. history? All that and more. To drive this point home, when Harris was a senior honors student at Bishop Kenny High School in Jacksonville, Florida, her guidance counselor advised her not to apply to any Ivy League schools. Not only did she apply to several, she was accepted to each institution and ultimately chose to attend Harvard University. When her mother wondered aloud how she and her husband would foot the bill for tuition, Harris responded, "I don't know, but I'm going." She worked her way through school to make it happen. In Harvard's core economics course, a professor told Harris, then a freshman, that she lacked the aptitude for economics. "You can't think," he said dismissively. She, of course, promptly chose to major in economics and went on to graduate magna cum laude after producing a senior thesis of such high caliber that her paper is housed in Harvard's archives alongside the work of such iconic alums as John F. Kennedy, Jr. "It goes to show you," she said at the moment, "never second-guess yourself, and never consider giving up. If there's something that you care about, don't give up. Keep pressing on, and you will definitely reach your goal." Count on Harris to defy the odds whenever and wherever they are stacked against her. Harris's name was first written in the annals of black capitalism when she arrived at Harvard with the intention of pursuing law. The summer after her sophomore year, however, the economics major decided to take on an internship in investment banking, courtesy of sponsors of Educational Opportunity, a mentoring program geared for minority students. I fell in love with Wall Street, she recalls, and the idea of taking on an enormous amount of responsibility at a relatively young age. At Morgan Stanley, which she joined right out of Harvard Business School, Harris leads the equity private placements effort in global capitalist markets and covers the retail and consumer industry as well, only one of a few black women to do so. In 1999, she managed the execution of the IPO for the United Parcel Service, at the time the largest public offering in U.S. history, with more than 100 million shares raising $5.47 billion in the process. So what was the message that Carla Harris, the most powerful black woman on Wall Street, shared with these wealth creators? What rule holds such a dominant position in the creation of wealth? A career is what you're paid for, but a calling is what you are made for. Who is the most celebrated actor? Though some may disagree, arguably Denzel Washington, who would devote a lifetime, if need be, to refine his character. Who is the greatest writer? Many would cite Alex Haley, who gladly spent 20 years in an effort to find his race a home and deliver to humanity one of the world's seminal texts. Who is the greatest entertainer and musician? Being ridiculed, mocked, and jeered couldn't dim Beyoncé Knowles' intense desire to use those gifts planted in her soul by the Almighty. For the better part of her childhood, poverty pinched her hard in her humble Texas home. 20 years ago, no one outside of her tight-knit circle had ever heard of her name. For years she had toiled in anonymity, but at last her opportunity arrived, and she was equal to the task. Knowles had made up her mind that hers would become a household name. Although she had gone to various performing arts schools and participated in singing and dancing competitions as a child, Knowles rose to fame in the late 1990s as the lead singer of Destiny's Child, one of the world's best-selling female R&B groups. Following the trio's breakup in 2005, Knowles released her first solo album, which debuted at #1 on the Billboard charts. Her third CD was released in November 2008 and included the immensely popular Single Ladies Put a Ring on It, which earned her 6 Grammy Awards in a single year, the most honors ever won by a female artist. Ask music lovers to count the most influential African-American musicians of all time on one hand, and most would say Wynton Marsalis long before they ran out of fingers. It has been said that Beethoven probably surpasses all other musicians in his painstaking fidelity and persistent application. There is scarcely a bar in his music that was not written and rewritten at least a dozen times. This is also true of Marsalis. Talent, it has been said, is simply the constant desire to practice. Who is the greatest athlete? Take your pick. But remember, it was Michael Jordan who was required to shoot more than 300 jump shots each day after he was deemed unfit to join his junior high school basketball team. Oblivious to everything outside of his goal, in little more than a decade, Jordan would guide his college team, the University of North Carolina, to the National Collegiate Athletic Association Championship before capturing the title World's Champion 6 times in the professional ranks. With all the vigor and tenacity in his nature, Jordan concentrated on his ambition, and the world has seen the result. Those who know him best have stated that his entire soul was focused on acquiring a championship ring. There is no grander sight than that of a young man or woman endowed with a great talent dominated by a single purpose, marching straight to his or her goal. Defeat only gives them additional power. Opposition only doubles their effort. Dangers only increase their courage. Regardless of what comes, whether sickness, poverty, or disaster, they never turn their eyes from the objective: to use their great gift and to monetize their talent. It is the discovery of your personal strength that not only gives meaning to life, but adds value to your bank account. Say what you will of genius, the fact remains that no amount of intellect has ever won out unless it is reinforced by the nerve to overcome the obstacles that appear. Was not John H. Johnson the son of a domestic? Herman Cain of a chauffeur? Willie Gary of a sharecropper? Sean Carter of a clerk? Stanley O'Neill of a farmer? Bob Johnson of a factory worker? David Stewart, of a mechanic, and Michelle Hoskins, the great-great-granddaughter of a slave who didn't win her freedom until age 13. Affluence demands, no, requires, that all who seek to join its circle be guided by the inspiration of a great mission to lift them beyond an ordinary life. Again I ask, have you discovered the elusive fourth law? Here's another clue. Why do you lead such a solitary life? An admirer asked of Mary J. Blige. Performing on this level leaves little room for anything else, was Blige's short reply. This art form requires my entire soul. It's the one thing that I do. Blige dropped out of high school 1 year short of graduating. Her mother urged her to work in the coastal seafood industry near her Savannah, Georgia home, earning minimum wage like so many of her peers. But her love for music could not be suppressed. Nature had locked in her spirit a treasure that eventually would bless millions. Blige's future may have played out in a numbingly predictable and bleak pattern of poverty and hopelessness had she not tapped into her early years of singing in her Pentecostal church. Years later, she recorded a cassette of Anita Baker's Caught Up in the Rapture, which she played for a friend. That friend happened to be Sean Puffy Combs, then a producer for Uptown Records. Moved by what he heard, he signed Blige to his label in 1989. She was 18 years old. Today, Mary J., as she is affectionately called, continues to gain momentum as an R&B artist, capturing multiple Grammys, American Music, and Billboard Music Awards. Her latest album, Stronger with Each Tear, sold more than 330,000 copies in its first week. As of this writing, she still works, still tours, and has ventured into acting, and she has no desire to slow down. Coasting is not a part of her DNA. I can't, she states emphatically. I just can't. It would be selfish to coast. I didn't go through so much hell to coast. As chronicled by a Fortune magazine article, in 1962, Harvey C. Russell did what no other black man had done before. He became a vice president of a Fortune 500 company. The firm was Pepsi-Cola, and Russell, then age 44, had been a standout salesman in its Negro sales department. But widespread rejoicing did not greet this milestone and Russell's eventual financial windfall. When it caught wind of Russell's promotion, the Ku Klux Klan called for a national boycott of Pepsi products. The group flooded the country with handbills that read, "Don't buy Pepsi-Cola and make a nigger rich." Undaunted, Russell knew that history is full of such examples. Fortune smiles on those who roll up their sleeves and pursue their calling regardless of what others may think, say, or do. What would force this skilled marketer to risk life and limb? Adept at product placement and blessed with the gift of gab, Russell knew that the pursuit of any vocation other than sales would be akin to being a fish out of water. Frustrated by her inability to find beauty products that met her needs, in 1990, New York native Lisa Price began adding oils and fragrances to unscented lotions. Although she held a lucrative position as a writer for the immensely popular Bill Cosby Show, she knew she didn't belong there. Other ideas burned inside of her. Price continued to experiment with her concoctions and eventually began producing a limited line of items for family and friends. She could have easily focused her time and attention on her writing career in such a sought-after and visible field, but when this talented screenwriter saw an opportunity for financial freedom, she ran with it. When word of her products spread and demand grew, Price began marketing outside of her inner circle. After taking her moisturizer and fragrance oils to a church flea market, Price sold out in a matter of minutes. For the next 9 years, her apartment was packed with inventory including jars, labels, lotions, and creams. Her business began as a modest mail-order operation in 1999, but Price soon opened the first Carol's Daughter store, named in honor of her mother, in Brooklyn's Fort Greene neighborhood. It was her mother, Carol, who had urged her to turn her hobby into a business. Soon magazines such as Essence and O, the Oprah magazine, featured her products, and celebrities such as Halle Berry, Angelina Jolie, Sean Carter, Jay-Z, and Jada Pinkett Smith became loyal customers. The following year, Price was named the National Black MBA Association's 2000 Entrepreneur of the Year and received Working Woman magazine's Entrepreneurial Excellence Award. "I'm not special," Price admitted. "I wasn't born with a lot of money. I'm just an average woman who listened to the universe when it told me to believe in myself. Your most important task is, and will forever be, to stay focused and uncover your talents and gifts. At the end of the day, you will be the individual who will breathe life into your dreams." Maintaining her focus paid off when an advertising executive caught wind of her spirit and brokered deals that placed Carol's daughter, which includes more than 300 products for the face, hair, and body in Dillard's, Sephora, and Macy's department stores, as well as the Home Shopping Network. Price's company is now a multi-million-dollar business with 7 stores and 85 employees. How one man was driven to use his gift. 7 years ago at the National Black MBA Conference in San Diego, California, I shared the dais with one of America's most prolific motivational speakers. For years, Les Brown has inspired and ignited audiences around the globe. It has been said that Brown's message resonates because he sprinkles warmth, humor, hope, and much-needed information into every presentation, especially in a society that is void of such values. I, like the nearly 300 conference attendees, was perched on the edge of my seat as this world-class orator shared his story. Once Brown grabbed the microphone and began to work his magic, everyone within earshot of his voice was hooked. Within a 45-minute period, he took his listeners to the source of his roots and how he was driven to use his gift. His tale began 6 weeks after his birth in the loving arms of his adoptive mother, Mamie Brown, the only parent Les and his fraternal twin brother Leslie have ever known. Mamie Brown, a 38-year-old single woman who worked tirelessly as a cook, maid, and nursing home caretaker, raised her 2 adopted sons in a 2-bedroom shotgun house on the outskirts of what is known as Liberty City, one of the poorest sections of Miami, Florida. "When she took us in," Brown explained, "she had no idea as to how she was going to support us. She wanted a family, and she proceeded to do whatever it took to clothe and feed us. She was a woman of tremendous determination and courage." But Brown's story does not end there. He spoke in glowing terms of the one individual who was equally responsible for his success, Mr. Leroy Washington, a high school speech instructor. Admittedly, as a child, Brown was a poor student. Though he possessed a quick and sharp tongue, written material was beyond his grasp. Moreover, because of his hyperactive nature and poor classroom performance, as early as 5th grade, the Miami school system labeled him educable mentally retarded, a burden and stigma that not only weighed heavily on his spirit, but forced him to flounder throughout his grade school years. Mr. Washington was not only the drama and speech teacher at Booker T. Washington High School, but he was a figure of note. He prided himself on finding and developing character and talent in his students. From the moment Les Brown met Mr. Washington and heard him speak, a seed was planted. He wanted to become one of Washington's star pupils. One day, during a speech class, Brown was asked to step to the blackboard and diagram a sentence. When Brown responded that he couldn't because he was classified as educable mentally retarded, his teachers stopped him in his tracks. "Don't you ever say that again," Washington demanded. "Someone's opinion of you need not become your reality." This event was the turning point in Brown's life. Most people die broke because they fail to uncover their true calling. They drift from one idea to the next, and as a result, they set their aim too low. They stop dreaming, growing, believing, pushing, and striving. In this global economy, that mindset is no longer an option. Each of us must begin to understand that either we expand or we will be expendable. Although I was humiliated that my teacher shared my shortcomings with my classmates, I was liberated. Mr. Washington looked at me with the eyes of Johann Goethe and said, "Look at a man the way that he is. He only becomes worse. But look at him as if he were what he could be, then he becomes what he should be." A 7-figure income does not require IQ, Brown told his audience. Only I will. In that one moment, Mr. Washington forced Brown to realize that there is something special inside of each of us, a basic goodness that we must choose to manifest in every possible way. Thanks to my mother and later Mr. Washington, I grew up with the conviction that I was going to be somebody. Where my peers may have envisioned only a life of minimum wage or even life on the street, I dreamed of greatness, and those dreams propelled me to pursue my gifts. Les Brown has a dream, and he is living it. In 1986, broke and sleeping on the cold linoleum floor in his office, he began to pursue a career as a motivational speaker. By the early 1990s, he was one of the highest-paid public speakers in the nation. His company, Les Brown Unlimited Incorporated, generates millions of dollars per year from his speaking tours and the sale of motivational products. Brown's audience is wide, from Fortune 500 companies to assembly line workers to prison inmates to special education classes. His mission is to promote a message that will help others become uncomfortable with mediocrity. A lot of people are content with their discontent, Brown explains. I want to be a catalyst to enable the average man and woman to see themselves having more and achieving more. In order to do something you've never done, Brown pointed out, you've got to become someone you've never been. Financial independence is a choice, not a destiny. Each of us has the potential to reach our monetary goals, but reaching those goals is up to you. Had I not lost my job in broadcasting as a disc jockey, I would have never experienced a remarkable string of events. I would have never run for the Ohio legislature. I would have never pursued the goal and dream of becoming a talk show host. I would have never seen myself as an individual who could make a difference in the community. My advice to all is to shoot for the moon, because even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. It is men and women like Les Brown who trample on impossibilities, like John Barfield, who don't wait for opportunities but make them, like Kathy Hughes, who kept at it when others give up, like Chris Gardner, who, when faced with disaster, turned neither to the left nor the right, like Michelle Hoskins, who, when others dropped to the rear, leaned on the well-worn scripture, "According to your faith be it unto you," and like Carla Harris, who during her moment of truth, as she stood before admirers, colleagues, as well as college students, when asked for the key to wealth and prosperity, openly shared, "I am really no different than you. I have made more money than you, but money doesn't really explain the difference. Everything that I've achieved during my career has been the result of knowing my particular strengths and talents combined with precise goal-setting strategies and discipline. I have learned long ago from those far more wealthy than me that goals and objectives are great, but understanding your gifts and purpose is imperative. If you follow this simple plan, financial success will take care of itself. This is the theme that I live by. This is the one thing that I do. When you get excited about life, growth, and money will get excited about you. Here again is the fourth law of wealth. Regardless of the difficulties, no matter how unpromising the circumstances, black millionaires are drawn by an irresistible impulse to the vocation for which they were created. Financial advice from the most powerful black woman on Wall Street. On the surface, Carla Harris's remarks may sound like simplistic mother wit that you tell others after you've already banked your first million. But Harris is sincere. She loves what she does, and she genuinely believes that her reputation as one of the most successful black women operating in the capital market arena is due to her ability to carve out a role that plays to her unique strengths. But surprisingly, her talents are not those you might expect to see in a successful investment banker. Today's global marketplace is fast-paced, extraordinarily complicated, rife with internal politics, and at times less than moral. Therefore, you would think that the individual best suited for this environment would be blessed with urgency, operate with a take-no-prisoners approach, and be skeptical regarding the motives of both potential clients and investors. Harris cannot claim any of these strengths. By all accounts, she is patient, compassionate, trusting of other people's motives, and deeply spiritual. So how does she succeed? Like so many of her wealthy peers who were both successful and fulfilled, she found a way to cultivate the talents and gifts that she does possess and put them to work. With a disdain for wasted time, she turned her natural patience into a long-term goal-setting plans of action, a skill that is sorely needed on Wall Street. One of the keys to long-term financial success is to think short-term, she explained during an interview. At the beginning of each year, I list my goals in 2 columns. On the right, I state the type of person I want to be, and on the left, I list more definitive goals, such as to generate $50 million in revenues within this calendar year. Furthermore, every day I prepare a to-do list that I know will undoubtedly change throughout the course of the day. Any change will eventually impact my week, months, and year. It is only in this manner that I am reminded that the future begins this very moment. That is an aspect that you cannot lose sight of in this business. Millionaires never ask if, they only question when. Next, she put her trusting nature to good use by developing key relationships both inside and outside of her company, relationships that have blossomed into a bevy of high-profile IPOs, including Martha Stewart Living Omnimedia, Burger King, and Digitas. If patience and compassion figure into Harris's work, so too does a good measure of faith. If you had asked me 22 years ago what drives you, what makes you successful, I would have been unable to answer your questions. My faith was there, but I wasn't conscious of it, nor did I know how to call on it. Understanding the source of my power, all power, and how to call on it and harness it and use it is the greatest lesson I've learned. I learned it through trials and errors, through hitting a wall and questioning myself, through losing my confidence and then regaining it, and through realizing it was the prayers, it was the faith, it was the expectation of achieving my goals that got me through. That's why every year at the top of my to-do list is my objective of establishing a deeper abiding faith, because every year I learn a little bit more about how powerful I can be with him out in front. Carla Harris has used her patience, compassion, and spiritual approach since she first walked through the doors at Morgan Stanley. She has honed it, perfected it, and stuck with it even when superiors and colleagues called her management style into question. Her distinct outlook is the cause of her professional and financial success, and, to hear her tell it, also the cause of her personal happiness. She is a world-class investor and capital markets player because she deliberately plays to her strengths and utilizes her gifts. In this sense, and perhaps this sense alone, Harris is correct. She isn't any different from you and me. Her story is relevant not because of what she has attained, but because she has uncovered laws and lessons that can serve as practical guides for each of us, specifically the have-nots among us. The majority of millionaires in this study realized early in their careers that they possessed certain talents and gifts as well as limitations. They accentuated their own positive traits, talents, and innate skills. Moreover, they refused to permit what they couldn't do to interfere with what they could do, what they were uniquely gifted to do. Nearly every member of the financial elite in this study was quick to uncover his or her strengths and eventually capitalize on his or her niche while minimizing any shortcomings. As one survey participant was quick to state, "We may be born equal, but, thankfully, each of us is different." And here lies the starting point to success. It's a lot easier being you than trying to be someone else. I found my niche. I selected a vocation based on my abilities, aptitude, and strong desire to become financially independent. No amount of positive or wishful thinking can make you something that you're not. Another member of the Seven-Figure Club made a play on words and said, "I decided long ago to live my life on purpose." And yet another respondent adeptly summed up this chapter when she stated, "A career is what you are paid for, but a calling is what you are made for." Best-selling author and magazine publisher W. Randall Jones dispels a host of myths regarding wealth and success and offers new evidence in his book, The Richest Man in Town. He reflects on Andrew Carnegie's well-worn refrain as being only somewhat true. In 1889, Carnegie, the steel magnate, wrote, "There is a power under your control that is greater than poverty, greater than the lack of education, greater than all of your fears and superstitions combined. It is the power to take possession of your mind and direct it to whatever end you may desire." Jones goes on to share that while each of us may possess incredible personal powers as well as an optimistic can-do spirit, our potential is limitless only when we find and use those powers to identify our talents, strengths, and purpose. Wealth creation is predicated on finding your perfect niche. Prosperity does not dictate what you should do, but it does demand that you do something and that you excel in your efforts. There is no grander sight than that of people in their right place struggling with might and main to make the most of what nature has provided, determined that not an ounce of their potential should go to waste. Go to the bottom if you aspire to reach the top. Be master of your calling in all its details. Study yourself, wrote Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, the 19th century poet, and most of all, note well wherein kind nature meant you to excel. This one thing I do. This one thing I do. Oh, the power of a great purpose. Does anyone doubt that such a mighty resolution adds power to the ordinary man or woman, or that it inspires individuals to accomplish what they've undertaken? Neither ridicule nor caricature, either dread of enemies nor desertion by family and friends, can shake the indomitable will of the man or woman who can mouth such a statement. No two words in the English language stand out any bolder than "I will." Strength, power, faith, and trust characterize their delivery. These words speak to you of triumph over difficulties, of victory in the face of discouragement, of lofty and daring enterprise, and of unfettered aspirations. Just as a photographer could never capture the elegance of Naomi Campbell or Tyra Banks on paper with an unsightly image in his mind, so too the ending balance in your checkbook will never be greater than your self-confidence, than your ability to execute your plans. The ability to set specific goals with clear plans of execution has created more millionaires than any other trait, and it has changed the face of the world. This age of specialization calls not for the merely educated or for the talented or the jack of all trades, but for men and women who have been trained to gather their abilities and complete a task as well as it can be done. Mere energy is not enough, and education is of little value unless it is concentrated. In the game of life, the most mediocre students will often outstrip valedictorians simply because what little ability average students possess are focused on a specialized skill. Scholars, replete with college degrees and heads full of knowledge and impressive resumes, never concentrate their powers. As a result, the scholars never find their way. They lack individuality. They are absorbed within the masses, lost in the crowd, weak, wavering, and drawing an average day's pay for an average day's work. What is more common than the unsuccessful genius or average men or women with commanding talents? Unrewarded genius has become a proverb. Hundreds of thousands of educated and talented men and women are now labeled down and out. How the wealthy discover their gifts. What are the questions we constantly ask the rich? Where do you live? How big is your home? Where did you attend school? How did you earn your millions? We naively assume that the answers to these questions will explain or provide the root cause of their financial success. Within the countless biographies published every year, not to mention the tabloid journals that circulate throughout mainstream media, the storyline is always the same. Our unassuming hero is a hardy soul born of modest means and, by virtue of his own grit, hard work, and fired by a lofty purpose, fights his way to wealth and riches. Let me assure you that these oversimplistic explanations of wealth creation are sorely lacking. The rich and powerful who find their names written on biographies and tabloids may seem to have accomplished their dreams independently of anyone else. But, in fact, they are, according to Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, invariably the beneficiaries of hidden advantages and extraordinary opportunities that allow them to make sense of the world in ways that others cannot. Yes, Which side of the tracks we are born on does make a difference, as does who our forebears were and the type of legacy they left. Furthermore, many times the lack of a formal education and household income is a constant. But asking the wealthy where they live, what type of car they drive, or how they earned their money is not enough. Answers to those questions are fairly useless. Only by asking what their unique strengths and gifts are and how they uncovered those talents do we begin to unravel the critical difference between the haves and have-nots. Valerie Daniels Carter stood her ground and fought every step of the way over obstacles that would have stifled lesser people to build her $95 million franchising empire. She had been part of the Burger King fast food chain for only 2 years before her ability was recognized and her place conceded. Whoever is armed with a dominant purpose is an army of one. But fortunately, the Creator is the judge and jury in this game of life where only the most focused and fittest prevail. In 1982, Daniels Carter left her banking career for fast food when Burger King created a program to attract more diversity to its franchise ranks. Convinced that she belonged in this arena, she jumped into the business with her brother, John, a Harvard Law School graduate who was more than pleased to stay on the sidelines and serve as an investor and advisor. Today, they own and operate 113 restaurants throughout the Northeast and Midwest regions, including 36 Burger Kings, 68 Pizza Huts, 6 Auntie Anne's pretzel bakeries, and an assortment of coffee beaneries and Häagen-Dazs ice cream parlors that have made the siblings owners of the largest black-owned fast food holding company in the United States. She has also become a fixture in her community, so much so that the Green Bay Packers football team elected her to its board of directors, making her the first African-American female to hold such a position. Daniels Carter's rise in the industry is due to her two-pronged approach that never wavers. Identify your talents and gifts and play to your strengths. Although many watched her corporate career with interest, Daniels Carter had other plans. Prior to launching V&J Holding Companies, she spent nearly 10 years in finance, first as a management trainee at First Wisconsin National Bank, now U.S. Bank, in its retail and commercial lending department, and then at Mortgage Guaranty Investment Corporation, MGIC, as an auditor in the underwriting division. While there, she began to connect the dots. Mergers and acquisitions had become the rage, which undoubtedly meant that corporate downsizing would not be far behind. Before someone else could determine her fate, Daniels Carter decided to make her move. Nearly 2 years later, in 1984, after completing her MBA, she was ready to strike out on her own. Together, she and her brother invested in a single Burger King in the heart of downtown Milwaukee. A combination of personal savings, investor contributions, proceeds from the sale of her car, and a bank loan provided the duo the $900,000 in startup capital that made the deal possible. After enrolling in the franchise's store management training program, she immediately rolled up her sleeves and went to work. 1 year later, the team used the profits to add another store before buying 4 more franchises in 1987. Daniels Carter's entry into the fast food industry was hardly a spur-of-the-moment decision. Driven by an intense entrepreneurial spirit, she had been mapping out a plan to run her own shop since the beginning of her college career. Banking and finance, she told me, provided a strong foundation so that I could piece together a business plan, learn the ins and outs of financing, and understand how to create a long-term strategy. While climbing the corporate ladder, I made a conscious decision to enhance my skill set. My brother suggested the fast food industry, and we researched a number of opportunities before arriving at Burger King. I eventually knew that one day I would operate my own business. Initially, succeeding in a difficult business and in her hometown of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which lacked an encouraging environment for minority business development, seemed daunting to Daniels Carter, and falling into 2 categories, black and female, would be not only a test of endurance, but a trial that required her to match responsibilities and tasks with strengths. Even today, with the demands on her time, an overcrowded schedule that frequently begins at 5 in the morning and often extends past 9 at night, And with more than 3,500 employees and annual sales that are swiftly approaching $100 million, you would think that she could easily lose sight of what she does best and be pulled into numerous directions. Not so. Daniels Carter does not need to shift her focus in order to play to her strengths. Instead, like Carla Harris, she remains true to what she already knew about herself, despite many temptations to change tack. Daniels Carter continually carves her role in order to capitalize on the gifts and talents that became apparent when she was a child of 5. The company training director and a close friend who has known her boss for more than 2 decades remembers growing up in Daniels Carter's neighborhood. We were interested in dolls, but not Valerie. She was busy making Kool-Aid and selling it up and down our block. She could get her brother to rake leaves, and she received the money. Later, she started a business walking neighborhood children home from school for a modest fee. That early entrepreneurial drive, along with an MBA, has served her well. Carter Daniels emphatically states her secret in a nutshell. There is nothing standing in your way to do what you want to do, provided you know what you want to do. You must come to grips with what you want and what you are capable of doing. What's your passion? Will you be an employee or employer? Owning a business isn't for everyone. Not everyone can tolerate 18-hour workdays. Each of us must take a look inside and identify our strengths. Decide what fits your personality, skill set, and God-given directive. Odds are you will never be broke, unsuccessful, or unhappy when you find your true place. But your heart must be in your business, and your business must be in your heart. Fortunately, I knew what I was designed to do: serve others. If the current generation of African Americans who find themselves struggling against cruel circumstance to make their mark could only understand that 90% of what is labeled as genius is merely the result of persistent, determined industry, as well as the exploitation of a single strength, they would inch even closer to prosperity and reach their financial goals. Unfortunately, millions of have-nots flit about from one occupation to another, from one business to another, from one trade to another, pursuing one idea today and another tomorrow, rowing upstream, chasing someone else's dream because it was the proper thing to do, or choosing a career simply because a friend, family member, or associate instructed them to do so. When you attempt to pursue that for which you are unsuited, not only will you neglect your strengths, but you will fall prey to your weakness, and any chance of wealth and prosperity is diminished because you are out of place. I urge you to follow your bent. If you wage war against your aspirations, you will surely lose. There is a sense of power in the spirit of the individual who has reached the point of efficiency, the tip of productivity, the place where his or her skill and prowess adds to the bottom line. It is here where those who will eventually be categorized as wealthy begin to work in harmony with their purpose. The fourth law of wealth obligates men and women like Lisa Price, Carla Harris, Les Brown, and Valerie Daniels Carter to, once they uncovered their unique gift, move immediately, fight it out as long as it takes, devote themselves to a single financial goal, live hand to mouth if necessary, and not care about the opinion of others. The difference that makes the difference. Eddie Brown took a little longer than Daniels Carter to uncover his calling, but he found it nonetheless. He struggled to get there, but he knew his right place rested in the world of finance. One of Black America's most successful investors discovered one of the top tenets of wealth creation: know thyself. There's a huge difference between possessing a gift and being truly gifted. Your ability to attain and amass wealth does not depend on innate powers regardless of how talented or gifted you may be. On the contrary, it is your willingness to exercise your faith, persevere, and above all, be diligent and engaged in your pursuit of your financial goals and objectives. These qualities and these qualities alone make up the it factor. Each of us must search within to answer 3 critical questions. Why are you here? What is your strength? And what is your unique gift? This exercise is not as simple as it seems. Recognizing our true strengths also means highlighting what we lack and relinquishing perhaps unattainable and unreachable dreams. With regard to Brown's financial prowess, consider the following quiz, which serves as a frame of reference for his talents and gifts. What if the bottom fell out of the stock market and, as a result, your portfolio plunged by 10% in a single week? What if one stock in particular had seemed like a sure bet when you bought it last month? The company markets a product that consumers need, is well managed, and boasts a consistent track record of growth until it missed the latest Wall Street earnings expectations and dropped like a brick. Would you 1. Sell it and question yourself for buying the stock in the first place? 2. Sit tight and do nothing until you recover your loss. 3. Smile and purchase more, assuming that everyone else is dead wrong. 4. Study and reconfirm your assessment of the company, then buy more. If you answered 4, you and Eddie Brown are probably kindred spirits. This shrewd investor is renowned for his ability to uncover stocks that increase in value even when it seems as if the sky is falling and the market is in decline. This strategy has not only helped him become one of Black America's wealthiest and most generous philanthropists, but it has also made him the most watched and emulated investor outside of Wall Street. And while he is perhaps one of the leading authorities on managing risk and mutual funds, he built wealth for himself and others by keeping things simple and sticking to his knitting, hallmark traits that undergird Brown Capital Management, the investment firm he founded in 1983. Although his company offers an array of mutual funds that require a minimal investment, foundations and pension plans must meet a $5 million requirement in order to garner his service. At first glance, there is little reason to think that Brown Capital, specifically its founder, Eddie Brown, is one of Baltimore's wealthiest, regardless of color or ethnicity, and one of Black America's richest. To set the record straight, Brown is a self-made man. Born in 1940 in Apopka, Florida, then a small, rural town 13 miles from Orlando, Brown was raised in a world where your food was fried and everyone you knew was Black and Baptist. His mother was 13 years old and unwed, so her parents raised Brown as their own. His grandparents lived in a one-story frame house without hot water or indoor plumbing. The Great Depression still had its hands around the throats of struggling blacks in the South, and Jim Crow's iron heel remained firmly planted on the necks of Black men and women throughout the region. Almost intuitively, his grandmother sensed that her grandson was smart and restless. Besides, she wanted to show him there were better ways to earn a living than raising plants and picking oranges. Orlando offered a slew of opportunities, and the warm weather resort town exposed the young boy to life far removed from dusty roads and farms, a life where businessmen handled daily affairs dressed in suits, starched shirts and ties. If you go to school, his grandmother coaxed, and get a good education, you too can sit behind a desk and wear a white shirt and a tie. Even then, Brown loved school and dreamed of being the first in his family to attend college. Brown's grandmother died when he was 13. Unable to care for him, family members sent him to Allentown, Pennsylvania, to live with his mother, who by then worked as a domestic. Although Brown's grades were stellar, instructors at the local high school tried to convince him that college was beyond his reach. Driven and locked on every word, this one-time shy boy graduated among the top in his class a year ahead of schedule before enrolling in Howard University, where, 4 years later, he would gain a degree in electrical engineering. After a stint in the Army, Brown took a job with IBM while attending graduate school at night. Once he received his MBA, he left the technology firm and shifted careers. He worked for a small money management boutique in Columbus, Indiana, and then, in 1973, he found himself at T. Rowe Price, the global investment powerhouse. It was there, at Price, where Brown realized his strength. His career switch from engineering to finance was an easy transition. He said of the move, "Engineering was very significant in my career preparation, What I gained in terms of analytical skills and rational thinking translates well into the investment world. Brown worked with a team of money managers who invested hundreds of millions of dollars for corporate pension plans, endowment funds, and foundations. A colleague who worked with Brown for nearly a decade in the trenches stated the obvious. He's smart as hell, and he keeps his cool under fire. He's a perfect fit for this industry. My interaction with the black financial elite reveals the same wealth-producing habit that holds true regardless of vocation. From former teachers to accountants, from one-time fashion models to electrical engineers who may have found themselves toiling in obscurity behind a desk for a Fortune 100 high-tech company. The millionaire's key to wealth lies in his or her ability to discover and organize strengths in order to apply gifts and talents. Brown's strength and temperament lie at the heart of his company's balance sheet. A tireless researcher and an unshakable optimist, he peers into the future partly by attempting to calculate the current value of a company's expected future cash flow. As a result, his expertise as a savvy investor rests in his uncanny knack to identify companies with a good chance of continuing their success 25 years down the road. Not only is he exceptional at his chosen line of work, Brown Capital boasts $6 billion in assets, but he is a steady and calming force in an environment rife with chaos and uncertainty, a quality he learned at the feet of his grandmother as she tended the orange groves on her family farm in Central Florida. This profile reveals a precious secret that's most effective if uncovered by you, the listener. Eddie Brown had a specific plan, and he conditioned his mind so thoroughly that nothing was going to block him from making his mark. By age 42, he had reached the pinnacle of his corporate career. At industry leader T. Rowe Price, he flourished. He was promoted to vice president and received bonuses paid in stock options in addition to a handsome salary. But in spite of his success, he was well aware of his unique gift and held a vision of striking out on his own. The individual who knows where he or she is going and is determined to get there will find or make a way to arrive at his or her destination. New rules of money. Forget passion. Follow your strength. For more than 2 hours, I sat in Steve Harvey's spacious corporate office north of Atlanta, Georgia, and listened intently as the actor, comedian, talk show host, entrepreneur, and best-selling author explained how he came face-to-face with the fourth law of wealth. At the least likely of moments, Harvey, an innocent 9-year-old child at the time, stood in his 4th grade class and, without an ounce of timidity, shared his goal of one day's starring on television. And what was the response? Ridiculed by his classmates and chided by his teacher, a young and impressionable Steve Harvey bore the brunt of jokes for the balance of the academic year. 29 years later, and with an ever-expanding fan base as well as a career that has yet to plateau, the joke is no longer on him. The youngest of 5 children born to a homemaker mother and a coal miner father whose life was cut too short because of black lung disease, Harvey left college short of a degree as well as direction. He spent his early 20s working at a number of jobs, from insurance salesman to letter carrier and even professional boxer, without finding anything remotely linked to his true calling. In 1985, after performing stand-up comedy for the first time, he eventually found his gift. By honing his craft through years of thankless engagements in small, obscure clubs, he came close to hitting the big time by the end of the decade, advancing to the finals of the 2nd annual Johnny Walker National Comedy Search. From there, Harvey's career took off. In 1993, he served as the host of Showtime at the Apollo, the famed syndicated talent show produced at the legendary Apollo Theater in New York. 3 years later, he was approached by a cable channel teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, the WB network, with the idea of headlining his own sitcom, The Steve Harvey Show. Geared toward an African-American audience, the show also created a unique bond between Harvey and a younger comic, Cedric Kyles, nationally known as Cedric the Entertainer, who played Harvey's best friend on the show and later joined him on a groundbreaking national stand-up tour. The tour, aptly titled The Kings of Comedy, featured Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, Bernie Mac, and D.L. Hughley. Together, this four-man barnstorming roadshow became a nationwide hit. In 1999, the Kings of Comedy became the nation's highest-grossing comedy tour, raking in more than $19 million. Harvey and his three sidekicks became national celebrities, a status only heightened by the release of Spike Lee's documentary, The Original Kings of Comedy, which captured highlights of a two-night show in North Carolina before a hugely enthusiastic audience. The film, which only cost $3 million to produce, earned more than $38 million at the box office. In 2000, in the face of much industry-wide skepticism, Harvey launched a daily talk radio show, The Steve Harvey Morning Show. After initially testing in Los Angeles and Dallas, the show eventually gained national syndication and a New York City flagship. It now airs weekly, reaching nearly 9 million listeners in more than 60 markets nationwide. As Harvey's radio show heated up, one daily feature called The Strawberry Letter caught fire. Co-host Shirley Strawberry would routinely read a letter from a female listener seeking relationship advice. She and Harvey would then offer their thoughts. Though Harvey was quick to confess that he never pretended to be a behavioral expert, he leaned on his experience from numerous failed relationships and decades of mistakes to inform with his brief but amusing commentary. A publisher soon pitched him to write a relationship book. Skeptical at first, Harvey knew that such books are a dime a dozen, but his book, Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man, was a revelation. Growing out of a segment on his radio show in which he served up hilarious advice to women callers frustrated in their relationships, the book laid out clear-cut advice, providing women with insight into a man's mind. While critics dismissed Harvey's advice as little more than a collection of overblown stereotypes, fans took to his comedic approach to self-help for the lovelorn. When I first wrote the book, Harvey shared, people laughed. What does he know? They countered, he's a comedian. With his radio show as a promotional tool, he was able to sell thousands of copies before word of mouth fueled more sales. Oprah Winfrey heard of the book and gave him her sizable platform. By the end of 2009, Harvey had sold more than 2 million copies and perceptions shifted. He wasn't just a comic. Now he was a relationship advisor. The dramatic story of Steve Harvey's fierce determination and quest to find his unique gift is a perfect illustration. His example is not just impressive in itself, but valuable as a metaphor. Arguably one of the wealthiest individuals in his industry, Harvey knows a thing or two about finding your calling, identifying your gifts and talents, and leading with your strengths. His point is clear. I wanted to be on television since I was 9 years old, but I didn't make it until I was 38. When my classmates laughed at my dream, it wouldn't be the last time that skeptics would doubt my talents and abilities. But I'm here now. Make your own choices before life makes them for you. Decide now to utilize your talents and gifts. Lose the misconception that you cannot be anything you set your mind to. Instead, lead with your strengths. When I look back over the course of my career, I know there was nothing else I was born to do. I was made to lift the spirits of others, and television and radio were the media that allowed me to do it. It took a while, but that's what I do. I really can't imagine doing anything else. If you truly desire it, the revelation in this chapter can mark the turning point of your life. You've been entrusted with God-given gifts, and now you have been commissioned to do something far from the ordinary. If there is any doubt that you were born in order to create wealth, I suggest that you abandon it at once. If you are going to possess a new future, you need a new beginning. If you are going to realize a new destiny, you will need a point of origin. Your progress toward wealth and prosperity begins with the self-assessment that follows. Failure to address these questions has proven to be a major stumbling block for the have-nots. Study and complete the exercise. Look within and try to identify your strengths. As you engage in this effort, do not allow any self-limiting beliefs to cloud your thinking or sabotage this activity. What will be your legacy? What will be your crowning moment? What is your life's purpose? What were you born to do? What is the dream or vision that sets the course for your life? Share the one idea that you will definitely pursue. What do you wish to occur within the next 5 years? What will you accomplish? Where will you be financially? What keeps you up at night? What gets you out of bed each morning? What are your skills, talents, and gifts? Why are you unique? Where are you going? The fourth law of wealth is the starting point of all financial success, as well as the stumbling block for those who fall short of the mark. Each of us desires the finer things in life, fame, fortune, and respect, but few go beyond just hoping and wishing for them. The easiest thing to do whenever you fall short of the mark is to blame the lack of ability or circumstances for your misfortunes. The easiest thing to forget, especially when fate has been unkind, is that you were born to succeed, not fail. Unfortunately, our nation has a growing number of individuals who have already sold themselves on the idea that they just don't measure up, that they just can't cut it. They are already dead in spirit, aimlessly parading through life with no sense of meaning or purpose. You will never rise above your level of belief and self-esteem. Decide where you are going. Begin from where you stand. If you know you want it, if you are determined to get it to the point that becomes an obsession and you back that obsession with continuous effort and sound planning, then you have awakened and stirred the coals of this most important law. And if your name is to be found on the roll of our nation's black millionaires, it is you who must identify and utilize your gifts and talents. It has been written that a fish cannot drown in water, a bird does not fall in air, and each of God's creatures must live in his or her own true nature. Success in life comes not from holding a good hand, but from playing a poor hand well. Perhaps Shakespeare said it best, "To thine own self be true." Now, have you found your calling? If so, you have completed the fourth step to financial fulfillment. Millionaire lesson number 5. Millionaires understand that they possess innate talents and gifts. They accentuate their positive strengths and skills. They refuse to permit what they can't do to interfere with what they can do, what they are uniquely gifted to do.